You know, when you think about some of the world's greatest institutions, you usually think of power or maybe a whole lot of money. But today, we're going to talk about a university that was founded on something way more revolutionary than that, a single, powerful idea. This is the story of Brown University. And believe me, it was a place that dared to be different right from the very start. And this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? Not from power, not from privilege, but from an idea. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement. It's basically saying, hey, we're not going to be defined by who your family is or how much money you have. Nope, it's all about the strength of the ideas. All right, so what was this revolutionary idea that made Brown so different? To really get it, to understand why it still matters today, we've got to go back, way back, to the very beginning. Okay, picture this. The year is 1764. We're still more than a decade away from the American Revolution. This is a time of really strict social rules and religious divides. And right in the middle of all that, a group of, well, let's call them visionaries, decided to try something totally new. They wanted to create a college that wasn't about pushing a specific belief system, but was all about intellectual freedom. And that was the big idea. Education should be open, fearless, and free. I mean, think about it. In a world where schools were often just about telling you what to think, they were championing a place where you could learn how to think. It was all about asking questions, exploring ideas without fear, and this really radical belief that your mind should be free to go wherever it wants. So it's one thing to have this amazing, lofty idea, right? But how do you actually turn that into a real brick-and-mortar university? Well, the first few years of Brown's existence were all about that challenge, taking this philosophy and building a whole new kind of school around it. It started out pretty small, as the College of Rhode Island back in 1764. Over the next few years, it grew, moved to its permanent home in Providence, and then, in 1804, it got the name we know today, Brown University. And with every step, every milestone, it was like they were doubling down on that original core idea. And you could see this commitment to freedom right away in a really key choice they made. See, back then, most colleges were basically tied to a specific church. But Brown, they made the absolutely revolutionary decision to welcome students of all beliefs. That one choice, that single act of openness, really set the stage for everything that followed. So for a couple hundred years, this idea of freedom was sort of the quiet, beating heart of the university. But then came the 1960s, and a new generation of students looked at that founding principle and said, let's turn up the volume. They took that original idea and sparked a revolution that would completely change what it meant to get an education at Brown. And that brings us to 1970. This was a huge turning point. You have to remember what was going on in the world, all these social and political change. Brown students were right in the middle of it. And they demanded an education that was as free and open as the university claimed to be. What came out of that was something totally radical, a new system that put students themselves in the driver's seat of their own education. They called it the open curriculum, and it was a complete game changer. Basically, they threw out the old rule book for a liberal arts education. All those mandatory core classes that everyone had to take, gone. Instead, students got the freedom and, the responsibility to build their own major, their own path based on one thing, what they were genuinely curious about. And this really shows you the difference, right? At a traditional school, they pretty much hand you a map and say, okay, follow this path. But at Brown, it's like they hand you a compass and say, all right, go explore, see what you find. It's a huge shift from just sitting back and learning stuff to actively going out and discovering it for yourself. Now, this journey towards total intellectual freedom, it hasn't always been simple or easy. Like any institution that's been around for centuries, Brown has a complicated history, and it's had to face some really hard truths about its past, like its founders' connections to the slave trade and its own struggles with making the campus truly diverse and inclusive. And looking inward like that is never easy. It's often been student activists who have really pushed the university to face its history, especially its ties to slavery, and to work on the big issues of racial and social justice right there on campus. And those moments, the protests, the tough conversations, as painful as they were absolutely essential for Brown to grow. But here's the key thing. Brown chose not to look away. Instead, they chose reflection and growth. The university has done a ton of research into its own past, even creating a center for the study of slavery and justice. They've put a huge plan in place for diversity and inclusion. It really shows a genuine commitment to learning from the hard parts of its history to create a better future. So, what's the legacy of this whole experiment in education? Well, today, that promise of a Brown education feels more important than ever. The university keeps sending graduates out into the world who aren't afraid to question how things are done and to carve out their own unique paths. And it turns out, when you let people follow what they're truly passionate about, the results are pretty incredible. You get leaders, artists, economists, voices that have literally changed the world. We're talking Nobel Prize winners, tech visionaries, social justice leaders. It's really a testament to what happens when you put curiosity first. So today, yeah, Brown is an Ivy League school, but it's so much more than that. It stands as a promise that education is something different here. It's not just about getting top grades, it's about creating a community of people who think for themselves, who aren't afraid to go against the grain and have their own intellectual adventures. And it all comes back to this one powerful idea, that education is not memorized, it is discovered. That's it. That's the whole philosophy in a nutshell. It's a reminder that real learning isn't just about stuffing your head with facts. It's about sparking a love for discovery that lasts a lifetime. And that is the promise of Brown. So, we'll leave you with the same question that's been at the heart of Brown University for more than 250 years. What would you discover if you were completely free to choose?